Welcome to Shop Talk Live, Fine Woodworking Magazine's bi-weekly podcast. I'm your host and Fine Woodworking editor, Tom McKenna. And with me this episode, our executive art director, Mike Pekovich.
Hey, guys.
Special projects editor, Matt Kinney.
Hello, everyone.
Our web producer, Ben Strano.
Yep.
And Jeff Rose, our video manager. He's being quiet. Before we get rolling, I have to take care of some business. With the shopping season in full swing, it's a great time to take advantage of Taunton's holiday sale. Don't miss dozens of fine woodworking project plans for less than $5 each and savings up to 80% on your favorite woodworking books and DVDs. To take advantage of these deals, go to tauntonstore.com. That's tauntonstore.com. Also, the registration is now open for Fine Woodworking Live 2017, which is set to take place April 21st to 23rd at the Southbridge Hotel and Conference Center in Southbridge, Massachusetts. Now is the time to take advantage of our early bird pricing. Register before January 15th, and you'll save $130. For details and to sign up, go to finewoodworkinglive.com.
I'm not sure exactly what is going on outside behind us. But
So, something happened.
Something about kissing a goat.
there was a sign that said "kiss a
There was
goat."
a kiss a goat sign that just went past our window. This is not Good Morning America. All right, now that the protest has subsided, let's get to the questions. The first one comes from Evan. My question regards sharpening stones and each of your opinions on what to buy. I currently have the King Combination Stone 1000 6000 grit. I'm looking to add an additional stone and or replace the King in the near future. What would you suggest? Purchasing an 8000 grit Shapton ceramic stone and using the King combo stone, replacing the King stone with the Shapton 8000 and 1000 grit stones, or purchasing a 12,000 grit Shapton and keep using the King combination stone and replace it later.
Well,
Doggy.
one of the problems is when you start to mix and match your brands, the grits may not correspond directly to each other. For instance, Japanese stones like the King, that 6,000 grit King stone is actually really pretty fine. I'd say it's probably the equivalent to a Norton 8,000 grit or a Shapton, probably maybe 10,000 grit, because Shaptons are actually grade coarser than Nortons. So, so the short answer is it's kind of hard to say what you're up against. And my question is, what don't you like about the 6,000 grit? Are you not getting a high enough polish from there? Yeah. I would say, so if you're going to go with the single Shapton, I would probably say go with the 12,000 grit, just to make sure that you're actually buying a stone that's going to give you a finer polish than the 6,000 grit is offering you.
Yeah, that's a good tip that Mike brings up about the grit differences between brands. That's pretty important. I found out the hard way. I had Norton combo stones that I bought when I first started woodworking, and I wasn't feeling like I was getting a good enough polish, so I bought a Japanese stone. I don't remember the brand, at a Woodcraft, and it was a 10,000 grit, and I wasn't getting any better of a polish. And I went back to the guy and I said, "Hey, what's up here?" And he said, "Oh, well, it's probably a different grade." And I said, "Oh, I wish I knew that."
Yeah. So I would do what Mike said.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was only going to get one. What I would really recommend, though, of course, is to go one step further and just get 3 new stones and get them all in the same brand.
That's what I plan to do. I want to get some of the Shapton ceramic stones, because I'm tired of the soaking that I have to give my Nortons. It's kind of a pain and it's messy, and I have to.
That used to get said on the honeymooners a lot.
What's that?
Getting tired of the soaking, I have to give Norton.
But getting a new set of stones of the same brand, to Matt's point, you are assured that you're working through a logical sort of order of grits there. So that does make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you could get a set of Norton combination stones for a fairly reasonable price, and you don't need the 220 that it comes with, but you'd have 1,000, 4,000, and 8,000.
Yeah.
Or you could
mine are 220,000, 4,000, 8,000.
Yeah. And I guess the Shapton glass stones, the higher grits are more expensive, but the other ones are not. They're fairly affordable, right?
Yep.
That's what
I
you
think
use,
so.
right? Isn't it?
About the same as Norton. They are really thin, so
Right. But they last longer because
they're
really
harder.
hard.
They wear longer. On the other hand, the Nortons, especially if you buy the single grit stones, there's two sides. You can flatten
Right.
both sides and get twice as much sharpening done before you have to flatten the stone.
That's a
Yeah.
good point.
The other thing, so the Shapton's being graded, the equivalent grit is actually coarser than the Norton. On a Norton set, I would go 1,000, 4,008.
Yeah.
On the Shapton, I would go probably like 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 for the equivalent. Because I went 148 Norton, then I ended up having to buy the 15,000 grit just to get a final polish. And that's where you start to get expensive, is they have like the 15,000, even 30,000 grit, which are like, I'm not sure what the benefit of that is for woodworking.
That's the Spinal Tap grit.
Maybe for like, sushi knives or something like that.
Yeah. There's also, my personal favorite water stones, because it's the ones I have, are the Sigma Power Select stones, which Chris Gochner rated best overall, along with one or two others, in his review of water stones from a few years ago. And because they come from a guy in Japan, if you keep an eye on the exchange rate, you can get them for an unbelievably good price. Oh. And they come with not just the water stones, but like a little pond to have them in when you're sharpening. And so it comes with a couple of different things. So it comes with a diamond plate, for example.
Oh, for flattening.
For flattening. So you get these 3 stones, a diamond plate, and a little water bottle, and this little water pond. And watching the exchange rate, I've seen it for well under $300. Yep.
Awesome.
And for, to get around soaking, I used to keep my water stones in a little Tupperware thing, which wasn't a big deal. And now for traveling, I have one of those Norton kind of like fishing tackle box style things where the stones, they clamp into like a 3-sided spinny rotisserie and they sort of soak in the water. So the 8,000 grit, which doesn't need to be soaked, that's always facing up. So the 1 and 4 are always partially submerged when I use it. So I just pull it out. It contains the mess, and you don't have to stop and wait and soak a stone for 10 minutes before you use it.
Well, that's one of the things. Like my stones, I spoke to the guy and he said these don't need to be soaked at all. You spritz them with water, and that's all they need.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you soak the 8,000?
For the same reason you wouldn't soak Shaptons or other brands. It's just non-porous.
Yeah.
It doesn't need it. In fact, a lot of people, I think it's a misnomer when people refer to non-porous water stones as ceramic, because every man-made water stone, in essence, is a ceramic stone, meaning it's a fired matrix of clay and abrasive.
Yeah.
So, but depending on the type of clay, the binder, and how you fire it, it can either be very porous
Or not, yeah.
to non-porous. So the Shapton stones, again, you don't have to soak those. You spritz them because it's not really going to absorb the water.
Yeah. They're all water stones because you use water to lubricate them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I would say in those stones I was talking about, the ones I own, I have the 1,200, the 6,000, and the 13,000. And those do a really nice job on A2 steel. So
Cool.
Awesome. Let's move on to 2 questions from Justin. And Justin says, I'm new to woodworking, and I've been struggling with where I want my shop. I'm moving into my heated garage right now, and it seems like anyone who does something in a garage never has enough space. Can I hang items from my garage door? Not heavy items, just items like lightweight hand saws, sandpaper, etc. Of course, it would be set up so that if the garage door was to be opened, those items wouldn't fall. The second question is, I have recently gotten a dust collection system, and I was wondering if I can place this in my basement. Of course, the basement is lower than my garage, so I was wondering if the unit would still work as effectively. So I think the first garage door question, needs addressing.
Yeah, throw anything you want on the doors.
Just don't open them.
I might question how often you need to open the doors.
Right,
Maybe
yeah.
if you have 2, dedicate one for, let's say you never open it, and then you can just sort of treat it like a wall.
Right,
Then you're
yeah.
okay. I don't think there are any weight issues involved.
When we talked about this yesterday, one option that I had seen and one of our former editors had, he had a 2-car garage, and he just basically tacked up a plywood wall, in front of one, and used that for hand tool storage and lumber storage and stuff.
that's what I would do if possible. Put up a fake, a temporary wall
Yeah, and
a false wall.
I believe he insulated behind it too, so made the space a little bit warmer.
You know, in my shop, I pulled out 2 garage doors. I replaced one with a walkout door, and the other I just built some carriage doors. But that's only like, you know, once every 2 years I bring in a new piece of machinery or something like that. And I don't hang anything from it, but I have tables in front of it and I stack lumber against it. So I treat it like a wall.
Yeah.
Unless I'm getting a new table saw or taking an old table saw out.
Yeah, so this is going to be a dedicated shop, which it sounds like it is. I mean, unless the garage door is the only door in and out, I just would not be opening it, you know? I mean, but
agree.
who knows? Like me, I have to open up my garage door in the winter to get the snow blower out, you know? It's even though my shop isn't since dedicated, it's I still have to occasionally open those doors.
Right.
Yeah,
So I don't know if you caught that. I just got a new table saw. I don't know if you caught that.
So did I.
So did Ben.
So did Ben.
I think Ben just got a new jointer too.
Yeah, he did. That joiner has been through 4 editors here at the magazine.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
We should have autographed it.
The best thing I like about it is each editor that's owned it has paid more than the one before him.
That's high value.
That's right.
It's got the Fine Woodworking logo.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it sounded like his garage space is heated. So I mean, the garage doors must be insulated in some way.
I would think so, yeah.
But and there was one. If you look at some of our tips from the past, there have been different solutions for storage along garage doors. But yeah, I wouldn't plan to open it again if you're going to hang something on it.
Probably the best option is if you, for small items, tack a shoe to the garage door. For something like a handsaw, just tack a
Tack
boot.
a shoe. Yeah.
And then you can just put it down in the boot.
Yeah, that'd work.
That would work, wouldn't it, Mike? Yeah. Be awesome.
Now he talked about the dust collection, putting it into his basement. I guess he wants to pipe it up through into the garage. I don't know from experience as to whether that's a good idea or not.
I don't see why it
I don't
wouldn't
see why
work.
it wouldn't, but
Yeah, I think going up is harder than going down. You
Yeah.
have to factor that into the size of your dust collector if you have really long vertical runs. But
yeah, I would have to, I would recommend just talking to the dealer, wherever you're buying the unit from and saying, hey, here's my plan. Does this have enough giddy up, so to speak, to work for what I want to do?
Yeah, I would think it's more an issue, not an issue of whether it's above or below the machinery, but whether how far it is from the machinery. Because obviously, the further you are from the machinery, the more suction power you lose.
Right.
And so I don't think having it be below it, but who knows? I mean, we're not experts on that. So.
Well, I also know like some dust collector manufacturers like Oneida, I believe they help you out in configuring dust collection systems for your shop.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
And there are specialty places all across the country that work, in setting up dust collection systems, and they might be able to help you out too.
Yeah.
So, well, let's get to our first segment. We have as a special guest this episode Brian Boggs, well-known chair maker and furniture maker. Brian began his furniture making career as a chair maker in 1983, making contemporary chairs in the Appalachian style. His first article for Fine Woodworking was in issue number 78 on building a bent back rocker, and that was in 1989. He's also appeared in home furniture in the 1990s. Welcome, Brian. We have with me Mike Pekovich, our art director.
Hey, Mike.
And Matt Kenny, our special projects editor.
Hi, Brian.
Oh, excellent. Hey, Matt.
So first, for folks, for the minority that probably don't know you, figure we'd talk a little bit about your beginnings. You started as a specialty chair maker in a small town in Kentucky to basically creating your own furniture line in your new shop in Asheville, North Carolina. What's been your inspiration design-wise over the years, and how has that evolved into the product line that you've got going now?
That's a good question, and I have to start by admitting that I'm not always aware of what my inspiration or what is influencing me. I'm just kind of going along and making what comes to mind. But starting out, certainly James Krenov was the first eye-opening designer that I encountered through his books that made me think seriously about getting into woodworking. Mm-hmm. But there was just no way I could afford the tools that he worked with.
Yeah.
It was actually John Alexander's book, Make a Chair from a Tree, that really opened the door to a pauper's way of stepping into woodworking, and that's why I started with chairs rather than something a little bit simpler. John's way of wrestling a tree apart and turning it into something that was beautiful and sittable was my obvious entry.
Yeah.
My first shop, I was able to, I would say, outfit in air quotes for a total of $50 for all the tools I had, not counting my chainsaw, which I already had. So there's just, I don't think, another furniture making shop that you could establish at that price.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think? You've been a successful pro, obviously, and you grew from a one-man shop in Berea to kind of, it looks like a really large shop in Carolina now.
Yeah, there's 11 of us here now.
What we get a lot of questions from folks who want or aspire to be professionals. What advice do you have for these folks? What are your secrets to success?
That's really hard, and I've been asked this before, and there isn't a secret, because you've got to approach this kind of thing like a ninja, in that everybody's situation is different. Nobody's going to walk my trail and be a success, because there were so many circumstances that fed what needed to grow at that moment.
Right.
I think everybody needs to just, if you're going to get into furniture making, be open to recognizing the opportunities that you are closest to.
Right, right.
And, work with what you've got. I've taught a lot of classes internationally, and there's a tendency for people that want to get into woodworking to soak up as much knowledge as they can and collect as many tools as they can, and I've seen so many situations where there's this swamping of the individual with too much exposure to stuff, and that's the danger of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And also, so many dang tools in their shop, there's no room to work.
Yeah.
And there's a lot you can do with a half a dozen tools. And what needs to happen is you need to really learn about the material, but you also need to learn about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And develop a relationship to what's in front of you.
Right.
And that might mean plywood. It might mean splitting out a limb and carving a spoon. Whatever that is, there's a way in for you that's going to fit. And no one else is going to be able to recognize it as well as you can.
Yeah.
Well, actually, your mom might.
Yeah, my mom still has some of my first woodworking projects. I think before we got you on the air, we were talking about some of the questions that we wanted to ask you, and Matt actually had probably an answer that comes in line with what you're saying, is just build nice stuff.
Right, and don't recognize where you are and stretch yourself a comfortable amount. Mm-hmm. With each new project. There's so many times that I have taken on, and many of my students have taken on something that's too big of a stretch because it's just intoxicating to think about making it.
Yeah.
And the stretch creates failure instead of going in bite-sized units into the next phase.
Right. Mike has a question for you.
I'm jumping in. Hey, Brian, can you talk a little bit about the importance of design? Because I'm familiar with the John Alexander chairs, but your ladder back is kind of light years ahead of that. And it seems like, your design sensibility is a really big part of your success. And I'm not sure that makers wanting to go pro, I think they think more in terms of craftsmanship as opposed to design. But it seems like design is a really important thing as well.
You're right on. And I, looking at my ladder backs, I'm flattered that you're calling them light years ahead. They're a few years ahead. I'm working on one now that I think is light years ahead. That light years, that's just a fancy thing to say. But it's what I think is really important is to work as well as possible with the vocabulary that you have to transform the material into something that expresses what you visualize.
Wow.
Perfect.
Accurately, and not have it be hampered by your technical limitations, or work within your technical limitations to best express what's inspiring you. And what keeps happening, and that I see happening in people's work, is often an infatuation with a new technique, and then the new technique is driving the design instead of inspiration driving it. Or inspiration is driving a design, but the limitations of technique are keeping that design from being realized. And you can see it in the flow of a piece, or in the feel of a piece, or in the function of a piece, and sometimes in the structural integrity of the piece. But design is so much more challenging to master than technique. But the technical development is what creates the landing point, or the infrastructure through which the good design can be born, or good design can even be conceived. So, my techniques have developed over the years, and I have to be reminded by people things that I forget. I'm working with a guy that's doing some CAD drawing for us on this, even on the new shaving horse, for example. And I, in getting into redesigning the shaving horse, I had forgotten some things. The shaving horse I'd been using was 25 years old, and I was totally happy with it. But when the idea came to rethink it and redesign it, I was really surprised with what was available, what opportunities for redesign, rethinking, and reshaping were available within that format through the lessons, the techniques, and the design skills I had brought to the picture now that I didn't have 25 years ago. So that same basic design of a horse it can be brought through a variety of different shops and come out a very different way depending on the limitations, the possibilities, the skills, and the vision of whoever it is that's involved. And maybe all of them come out beautiful.
Yeah.
But I think, to me, the mastery of design is about working cleanly and skillfully within the resources that you have, and being able to see the design that is coming to you. And I say that in a funny linguistic way, because I really do think that original design, if we can call something original, and good design is not something we think up.
Right.
It's something that happens in the course of being aware of what's going on around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're developing your skills in a way that's inspired by the tools and by the materials and by your own relationship to all of that, then you're creating the groundwork or the scenario through which good design can move.
Yeah. Well, it makes me want to sign up for one of your classes.
Yeah.
That's a good pitch. Hey, you jumped to the shave horse before I can get to it. Do you want to talk about that a little bit in terms of how the project evolved and what it's all about? It's basically a limited edition of your shaving horses that we're partnering with you to promote it, and Lee Nielsen is selling them, right?
No, the sales are coming through us. Lee Nielsen is in the similar role as you. Kevin, who's our communications coordinator and web developer and marketing guru here, was partly brainstormed this idea, and I think it came out of conversations about. Actually, I can't remember. Kevin's sitting here. Kevin, do you remember what the first thing that spawned this idea?
25 years.
Well, it came about so organically that I don't know if it was one of us that thought of it. But in any case, the idea emerged
Yeah.
to celebrate our collective anniversaries. I mean, I'm 35 years into this now, and you guys are 40 years into it. Lee
Yeah.
Nielsen's 35 years into it. The shaving horse was something I designed 25 years ago about this time, and
Right.
so it just seemed like let's
Let's do it.
let's do something fun with it. And there's also has been some buzz on different chats online
Right.
about shaving horse design, and I thought, well, I've already done with that. I already designed that a long time ago. I'm using it. It's fine. It works great. And with a little coat, kind of push, I was asked to really rethink it. And there's actually, I think, a surprising amount of not spin, but real core changes that were worked into this that I didn't even think I didn't think anything was needed. But now that I use the new one, I don't want to use my old one at all. From the ergonomics that I've learned in the last 25 years
Yeah.
to my craftsmanship has improved, and our shop is better at producing things, and the engineering that I've done in the last 25 years has fed some ideas that allow me to improve the mechanics and leverage of the whole horse. So,
So where can folks go to purchase the horses? Is it your website?
ShavingHorse.com. It actually has its own website,
Nice.
and we're selling plans for it for folks that really want to do it themselves. And there will be some slight variations on the plans. I've been going over this with Bruce, who's drawing this on his computer, because we can do things efficiently in this shop that wouldn't be very nice to ask somebody else to do.
Right.
We've got tricks and tools and systems here that allow things that are pretty impractical in most shops.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're modifying the plans a little bit, not functionally, but aesthetically and practically,
Yeah.
that make it more approachable for most woodworkers.
It sounds like a fun project. Hey, before we let you go, we have a regular segment that we do where it's our all-time favorite technique of all time for this week.
I had a question.
Oh, Matt has one more question. I'm sorry.
Do we have time for one more question?
You have time for one more question, Brian?
I've got time. I'm yours.
Because what you were saying about the spoke shave and how you initially thought, well, I've had this one for 25 years.
Shave horse.
Shave horse, sorry.
And that's okay.
That there was nothing you thought you could do to improve it, but then you discovered there was. And earlier I was thinking I would want to ask you, is there any piece of furniture that you've made through the course of your career that you think is done, that there's nothing else that you could do to it to improve it aesthetically or ergonomically because you make chairs? Do you think you could still go back to anything? Even for me, I think the ladder back chair is ergonomically heaven and aesthetically just beautiful. And I just wonder if you look at that chair and also think that's done. There's nothing else I could do to that. Or is there?
I looked at that chair for years and felt that it was done. That was just my limited thinking, or it wasn't time to do anything. And what seems to happen is I personally hit plateaus and that I'll stay on for a while, or a design will hit a plateau, and I just don't see anything else to do with it. But my skills and techniques and abilities have evolved now such that I have some radical improvements I would love to make on that chair. In fact, a whole redesign.
Wow.
It can be a lot better from a whole lot of standpoints. And actually, there's everything about it. I mean, when you start with the format of a post and rung chair, you're already limited, and I ran into that a long time ago, and that's what got me into using a router, because was chopping on my chisel or my mortises with a chisel, and
Yeah.
that was my tool set was having a profound limitation on design.
Mm-hmm.
But we're even incorporating carbon fiber now in fiberglass, and
Wow.
metal is already in our outdoor line, but I'm working on a new chair design that incorporates things that I've never worked with before, and then that feeds my thinking about the ladder back and what the potential is for that. And, a lot of things change, possibilities change, and ideas evolve, and market changes are impacted by the size of the shop, how many people we've got, the volume of work that we do, and therefore the investment that can go into the development of one new design. And one of the things that in looking back at the history of that ladder back chair is it evolved very slowly over time.
Mm-hmm.
But its next evolution is going to have to be radical. I'm not ready to just tweak it a little bit, which I could, but the way I produce each part needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing it, Brian.
Yeah, that's a big challenge. Because I have one of those. I have two of your chairs in my office, and it's one reason that my boss likes to come down and have meetings with me because she likes the chairs.
You'll have to get one of the new ones.
All right, let's get to the segment that I mentioned before. It's kind of a fun thing where we talk about a favorite technique that we're using in a piece that we're building lately. So it's our all-time favorite technique of all time for this week. Do you have something in mind?
I looked at that note, and it's a real struggle. There are two groups of techniques that have radically changed what we're able to do here, and one is template bandsaw curves and template bandsaw cyma curves that where we can now get glue joint quality cuts in a precision cyma curve that's a three-way compound orientation to another curve. And that
Wow.
That one beats mine for the week.
really exciting. That's stuff that we can't get a CNC shop to do.
Wow.
And that opens design potential that makes it really hard for me to sit here. and part of that is, embracing the fully housed double tendon, which I wrote about in an article not that long ago with you all. I think it was called the universal joint.
Yes,
But
I think that was it.
Between that joint and the bandsaw sculpting potential, there's some really exciting designs ahead. And while I love sitting at the horse and shaving with my draw knife, there's nothing I love more than that, really. But those aren't changing the scope of design in a way that excites me as much as the other two techniques are. And if it's one of them, it's going to be the bandsaw technique. The joinery could potentially be done by hand, but I don't want to give either one of them up.
Right.
It's allowing me to work fluidly the way wood is.
Wow.
And that, I think, is something seriously missing in our industry, in our tradition, a lot of it. Now, the Windsor, post and rung, the split and shave kind of stuff, that is working with the way wood is, but in a very limited, within a very limited scope.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, great. That's sounds like a great article that we may want to cover at some point. But
Well, let me know. I'm still waiting to get this one finished with you all. I need a photographer down here.
well, we'll get John Binzen on the phone or on the plane rather. And go down there, so. Well,
I
thanks.
think what happened? We tried to double up or triple up the photo shoot, and I couldn't do
Right.
all of that together. So
It'll be worth the
but,
one trip, the one article, that's for sure. Well, thanks for spending the time with us, Brian. It was a great conversation, great insight into design and what you're doing. It's good to see how you're staying ahead of the game and staying innovative. It's great.
it's been a lot of fun, and it's been fun talking to you guys. I'd be happy to do this again sometime.
Great. Well,
There we go.
we'll see you soon. Take
Thanks,
care.
Brian.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian.
good day.
Thanks, Brian. Well, that was an awesome interview with Brian Boggs.
Yeah.
Just like I said, his conversation made me want to take one of his classes. That's for sure. Let's move on to our discussion about our all-time favorite technique of all time for this week. Do you want to start us, Matt?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can start. This is something I did this past weekend, actually. I've been making a pair of tee boxes. They're identical. And the tee box was box 51 in my 52 box deal that I did.
Is that on your website?
I just got a website, Tom.
That's awesome.
But it's you can see pictures of it there, but also I'm sure Ben will post some. You could also see them on my Instagram account.
What is your account?
It's kenny.matt.
What's that?
Yes.
Okay.
So anyways, this box has a base to it, and the base is made with two mitered frames, one on the top and one on the bottom, and there's a plywood spacer between them that separates them like 2.5 inches. And at each corner, after I've assembled these frames, I notch them, and then I glue in these little posts so that when the base is all done, whatever side you're looking at it from, it looks like a complete little frame with two verticals and two horizontals.
Right.
Now, this is all small style work, so I can't really reinforce that joint with a dowel or a mortise and tenon or anything. So they just get glued in to these little notches that I cut. And the first time I did it, I glued in these little legs with Nexabond glue, which is like a type of super CA glue. And it worked really well. It's fine because you can sit there and hold pressure on it and keep it there for 8 or 10 seconds, and it's fine. You can move on.
Okay.
This time I wanted to use yellow glue to do it. So I knew that I was going to need to clamp them in place. And the best way to clamp them would be from that outside corner. Because if you put pressure on that outside corner, it's going to get spread out at 45 degrees, which means the pressure is going to go directly onto that joint between the surface of the little post or the leg and the notch, right?
Yes.
So I wanted clamping pressure directly on that outside corner. So what I came up with is for the outside, on the outside corner, I just took a piece of plywood and cut a 45-degree groove in it. Took a V-groove bit, a 90-degree V-groove bit, and cut a channel or a groove in it. And that fits over the outside corner of the post and gives you a flat bearing surface.
Right. Okay.
For the clamp.
And protects that sharp corner.
And protects the sharp corner. But I needed something on the inside of this frame assembly for the clamp to go against so that I didn't dent anything.
Right.
So there I just took, I took plywood, and what I did was cut a 45-degree angle on two sides of it. So I created a little triangle. And so that little triangle fit into the inside corner. And then I had this grooved piece that fit over the outside corner. And I had flat bearing surfaces on each side. And so it was just boom, 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 and clamp it up. And I got awesome clamping pressure from this.
That's awesome. I did see that on your feed, and I'd seen that problem before, but I'd never seen that solution where you're actually clamping from the inside with that little block. So the two blocks, what you're doing is you're creating two clamping surfaces which are perpendicular.
Parallel to each other.
Parallel, but perpendicular in line to the pressure you want to apply to the joint. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really awesome.
Yeah. So it worked fantastic, and it made, because I could have done that with tape. I could have done it with a outside call-in tape, but, clamps are just, that's why people use them, because they're good at clamping stuff up, so this really helped. And, but I'm sure Ben will post a photo of it or a couple of photos of it on the website. Or they could go. I happen to have an Instagram feed, by the way. It's kenny.matt.
Kenny.matt.
And Tom, by the way, Tom, I have a website.
What's the URL?
mekwoodworks.com.
All right. Let's move on to Mike's all-time favorite.
Well, that was almost as good as like a 3-axis Sima curve.
No, it wasn't. Listen, if your technique involves something that only advanced mathematicians understand,
It's a winner.
yeah, it's the winner.
Mine falls quite a bit short of that as well. But it's sort of a technique nested in a philosophy, which is the philosophy is for every project you make, try a new technique and buy a new tool. Which I'd sort of gotten away from because a lot of my stuff is a little bit simple and a little bit repetitive. So, not to say that I'm not taking baby steps here and there, but anyway,
Arts and crafts furniture.
I'm making a rocking chair, which involves some curves. And last episode, I talked about, foray possibly into steam bending. Well, I kind of went away from that to bent lamination, where I took some stock and sawed it into 1/8-inch veneers and clamped them around a bending form. And it's actually the first time I'd done that. And it was like really, really cool. So that was like my new technique. I learned a lot. The main thing I learned is you need a lot of clamps. You need a lot more clamps than you think you need. So I went to Home Depot and I raided the clamp section for all of their C clamps. So if you go to my local Home Depot for a C clamp, you're not going to find one. So it was cool. I came home with like 24 C clamps to kind of go with the C clamps I already had. And one of the problems kind of with what we do at the magazine that I was sort of kind of ran into with this is that a lot of times we try to explain a technique really thoroughly in the magazine. But one of the axioms is that the more thoroughly you explain a technique, the more difficult you make it appear to be. And I think I kind of succumbed to this because I thought, bent laminations is really hard and blah, 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 and clamping calls and bending forms and axes of clamping force and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like,
Spring back.
no, you just do it. You make a form, you drill holes in it to fit the clamps in, you get something on top, you put some glue on everything, you make a mess and you clamp it up.
Yeah,
Done.
yeah.
Then you fit the parts to the shape as you work. Right?
Yeah. So anyway, it was really fun, and I enjoyed that technique. And now it's like, cool. It's like Brian said, you increase your techniques, and then those techniques can inform your design.
Right.
So that was kind of a cool thing. So technique is it's either buying lots of clamps or bent laminations.
So I have 3 responses to that.
Awesome.
Let's count down.
Response the first.
Yes.
No. Well, so we talked because you and I talked about this before you actually did it.
Yeah.
And I thought that I had you convinced to use a vacuum bag, and then I show up at your place, I think on Thanksgiving, and you have all these bent lamb setups with clamps galore, and
Yeah.
I was dashed.
Dash.
I was so bummed out. 'Cause
Number one, Home Depot didn't have a vacuum press system.
Mike,
And number 2,
as if you don't have access to a vacuum press system. I own 2. Anyways,
One you use for your vegetables, right?
yeah.
no, that is a viable alternative. It's one of those things where it's hard to dive into a whole vacuum press system to do your very first bent lamination.
But this comes to my second point, which is
Yes.
a point you also made. You just do it. And, because what's the worst that could happen? I mean, okay, in theory, in a wood shop, you could cut off your hand. But, most likely, nothing really bad's going to happen if you just try something,
Yeah, that always works out.
I can't wait to tell my 16-year-old that.
I said,
Well, here's one thing.
in the wood shop.
Is when I was clamping this thing up, there was more squeeze out than I've ever seen in every project I've ever made in my career of woodworking.
Cumulative amount of squeeze out was less.
What happens in a vacuum bag when all this squeeze out goes in there? How can you possibly get this thing apart?
Well, I've never had that much squeeze out. I think you're applying too much glue.
That's quite possible.
And then, the third thing that what you're saying, because you said every time you have a new project, just buy a new tool and try a new technique.
Yeah.
And one of the things I found interesting that Brian said, because he said this was, you either have to improve, learn new techniques and get new tools so you can do better design,
Right.
or you have to learn to design better with the tools and techniques you have.
Yeah, I think they go hand in hand. I
Yeah.
think that's why designing furniture is the most difficult thing in the world to do, because you have to be a good technician in order to be a good designer. And you can't design unless you understand sort of the engineering of making things out of wood. It's like you can't be one without the other. So,
Yeah. We're going to get a letter from that one pediatric neurosurgeon.
that
'Cause
one.
you just said woodworking was the hardest thing in the world. And there's that one guy out there that listens to us. He's a pediatric neurosurgeon. And he's going to write in.
Oh, okay. Well, I think the order of complexity probably goes from furniture making to musical instrument making to stair building to boat building. I would say like building a boat out of wood is probably the ultimate form of art
Accomplishment. Yeah. Yeah. Stair building is impressive. I mean, like
Yes.
the big curved stairs and all that.
Right.
Yeah. Not the straight
No,
stairs.
like the three-dimensional,
The
like
straight-
in space, the whole, railing spiraling up into
Yeah.
the heavens.
Yeah.
Speaking of heavens, here's mine. Favorite all-time technique. Mine actually kind of grew out of a mistake, unfortunately. I know I'm beating this cabinet project to death, but
Are you building a cabinet?
I
Are you? Is it on
Cabinet on
stand?
stand. It's on my Instagram feed. I make slow progress, but I was working on the drawer pocket over a long extended weekend, and I discovered, unfortunately, that my drawer opening was tapered, and I thought I had everything squared up, but so the opening was wider than the back of the drawer pocket. So
Do you have a center divider or something like that?
no, yeah, I have a center divider that was actually perfectly squared. So it was only tapered on one side. I messed up somewhere. I don't know where, but anyway, I messed up the install. So my idea was to build a traditional dovetail drawer to stick in that pocket, and this little error, even though it was slight, was enough to make the pocket too wide. So I wound up deciding, all right, I'm going to use sliding dovetails to attach the drawer front, and then I can build out drawer guides to kind of shim out the one side. And so that's what I did. The one side, once I had the drawer built, I put it in the opening, and I put a guide on the side that was perfectly square, installed that, and then just inserted the drawer and kind of planed away the other side guide until the drawer went all the way in. And it was pretty successful. Time consuming as all get up,
Okay, so it was wider at the back than at the
It
front?
was wider at the front on one side. So there's a vertical divider that was perfectly, perfectly running front to back. But I messed up the outside of the case.
And it was wider
It
at
was
the
wider.
front.
It was tilted, I guess, wider at the front. So I just had to keep planing away a little bit of material. And then I've got a perfect fit. And I followed Chris Gochner's article on doing side hung, I think it was side hung drawers, and I adapted that with on the drawer guides. I just made this, some slotted holes, and I was able to dial in the reveal once I had it running front to back.
Because they become your stops against your wider drawer front.
Right, and so
Very
I got it inset just where I wanted to, screwed down the guides perfectly, and now I've got this sweet sounding drawer. I love that, when it goes.
Very nice.
So I'm excited, even though it's a result of a mistake, but I wasn't angry about it because it allowed me to kind of just use a hand plane, kind of just. That's one thing I do like about woodworking a lot more now that I've gone into hand tools is the quietness. And even though I made a mistake, fixing it was not that unpleasant.
Right.
So it was a fun thing to work on.
Cool.
Yeah. Hey, did you guys know that 37% of all woodworkers can only count to 9.5?
Okay.
Gotta
Well,
think about that.
I think we're gonna have to start wrapping up this puppy.
You'll figure it out.
Hey, one thing I wanted to mention was the fact that we partnered with the Highland Woodworker web TV show to help Chuck Brock and his team develop and deliver content. The latest episode, number 28, is live now, and it features one of our own, John Tetro, our associate art director. And John is a featured guest on the show, and he demonstrates how he works with reclaimed wood. It's a really cool, quick technique video. So he explains it really well, and he's very talented. So check it out.
Yeah, you think of stuff from reclaimed lumber as being rustic, or you just sort of bang it together. But John has really great methods for maintaining sort of the patina of the surface while still building really square, accurate joinery.
Yeah.
And his strategies for that are really smart. And you start to think about the problems. Yeah, I got some boards that aren't exactly flat, and I don't want to surface them to remove the surface, but how do I build something square?
Yeah, just square up the joinery.
Yeah.
And he demonstrates in a quick way how to do it. It's really quite nice. You can check out the episodes, and all the episodes rather, at thehighlandwoodworker.com. And that's going to do it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Tune in again in 2 weeks for our next episode. Remember to send your questions and comments to shoptalk@taunton.com. And please spread the word about Shop Talk Live to your woodworking friends and neighbors. You can catch the podcast via iTunes, stream it on the web at shoptalklive.com, or catch us on iHeartRadio. Finally, you can keep up with Fine Woodworking on Instagram and on Facebook, and look for all of us on Instagram as well. Thanks for listening, and have fun in the shop. Brian Boggs, well-known chair maker and furniture maker.
This is Tom from Amway.
Hello, thank you for calling Brian Boggs Chairmakers. We're either on the other line or we're back in the shop. We offer tours at 2 p.m. Monday through Friday and Saturday by appointment only with at least 2 days advance notice. Again, thank you for calling. We'll call you back as soon as...
I guess we should have called it 2 o'clock. We could have got a free tour.
Now we have, at least Ben has something to use at the end.